Hello and welcome to the Blackout gameplay example video. In this video I'm basically going to take you through a turn to basically show you how the game mechanics work, and I'm going to play the game currently right now with a Slayer and Tracker, and I've already gone through and I've placed the mission information in the campaign page that outlines the first mission, so I'm going to be playing off that mission type, which is basically the goal is to retrieve medical supplies, to simplify the goals, locate a missing boy, search for the whereabouts of 2 adults that are missing that were chosen for a lottery, and then bring back the heart of a lurker. So I'm on mission 1 out of 10, and so I'm going to play through that. What you see right now is not final representation of the game itself. This is a prototype that's been printed and cut by hand, so all the cards are going to be rounded corners when they are produced. The actual pieces for the tile are going to be thick 2mm jigsaw cut, able to snap and fit together. The miniatures themselves are very representative of what they're going to look like in their final form. They just might be thickened up in certain areas, so, you know, to protect any parts from breaking, that sort of thing. So let's get started. So I'm just going to go over my 2 player characters right now. So I've got the Tracker and the Slayer, as I stated before. Each one of these guys comes preloaded with some item cards that are found in the first mission briefing. Basically, so I've got a primary and secondary weapon for my Slayer. I've got 2 of his 4 abilities that I've chosen to bring along on this mission so they can be spent. He comes with a reinforced coat for armor, and he comes with painkillers for his starting item. The Tracker is going to come with a vest that allows him to carry extra items. He also comes with antibiotics that allow him to heal, and his 2 special abilities are shown here, which are multi-strike and hammer, and he's got his primary and secondary weapon as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So each mission starts with a short haul piece or a long haul piece. Each mission type is going to basically say which of those 2 pieces they're going to use. So in mission A, or mission 1, you're going to start with a short haul, and the last 4 spaces are occupied by heroes. Since just the 2 heroes, I'm just occupying those last 2 spaces. So the first thing that happens is basically I'm going to look at the exploration map deck and see that I'm in a hall, and whenever you're in a hall you can always draw a junction piece, because the junction pieces are non-event areas. The halls and rooms are event areas. So I'm going to start by drawing a junction piece to determine what is the next component that is placed. And right now I'm going to place a 4-way hall with a piece of debris. So moving back to my guys, I'm now going to grab a 4-way hall intersection, place that there, and then grab a small piece of debris, place that there as well. Once again, I just want to say that these pieces will be puzzle pieces that will interlock and work together as a system. So now that it's placed, it's now time to perform one of the 2 actions per player. So each player is going to activate, perform 1 action each. So right now I can look at the stats and see that the Tracker has a move of 5, the Slayer has a move of 4. So the first thing I'm going to do is move the Slayer 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to move the Tracker 5. So movement is handled in horizontal and vertical. There are no diagonal movements, and that's the way spacing is counted when it comes to range as well. I want to talk briefly about debris. Whenever you enter a space that actually has a debris tile in it, each player can search that by rolling once on the search table. So because I'm in this intersection space that does have a debris piece, I can roll for each one of my players as a second action. So back to the players in action. I've basically gotten my search table, which is what I'm going to use to roll on. So what you do is you roll 2d10, because the game is a d10 game, and then designate a 10s and 1s. So black is the designation for 10s. So basically I've rolled for the Slayer. He is using his second action, which is a 21. So on his second action, he has found 20 credits. So basically I'm going to give the Slayer 20 credits, and then move on to the Tracker. The Tracker now has a turn to roll. He's basically rolled a 78, which is far better. So he has received an ammo card. So basically, the items are divided into a deck that has 3 different card types on it: healing, salvage, and ammo. So each of these card decks has a number of varying cards that give you different items worth different values. So I'm going to draw from the ammo deck and determine the tracker has gained launcher ammo. So he can always store this and then sell that for credits. If the engineer was here who actually carries a grenade launcher, he could use that. But for now, he's just going to hold on to that. Alright, so both players have performed their actions. They've moved, and then for their second action, they both searched. One finding credits, which was the Slayer, and then the tracker finding grenade launcher ammo, which is pretty expensive in terms of something to sell. Alright, so the next option would be basically the next turn would start. So it activates based on reflex. So the tracker has a higher reflex. One thing I should have gone over before, and the Slayer has a lower reflex. So the tracker has the option to move and react first in this situation. So I'm going to go ahead and move him first. He's basically going to move forward. So 1, 2. He's going to stop after second movement and then draw from the haul pile. That will determine what happens next. So he has drawn a strain card. So basically, we're going to place one hallway piece, a short hallway piece, and then it's going to have a door to the left. So now that we've actually placed that piece and seen that the card has said strain, we actually are going to draw a strain card as well. So moving over to this next deck is the event deck that's alongside the item deck. The events are divided into different deck types, and each of the map cards tell you which of these events to draw. Now, one thing I want to mention too is that when it comes to drawing a strain or drawing a reward, you can continue your movement. When it comes to drawing a hazard or combat, something that's detrimentally interactive to the player in a physical way, the turn stops at that point. So he's only moved twice, he can draw a strain and continue. So drawing a strain card, basically I've drawn radio static. So it basically says, an overhead speaker switches on, sending out a loud pop from the passage overhead. Within moments, the space around you fills with voices calling out to you, some pleading, others screaming. Fear, mind test. So basically, mental strain cards cause fear or panic. So you basically gonna roll, and then you're gonna add your mind ability to your base roll. So basically, it states in the rule here. Each player rolls adding their mind stat to the roll. Any player failing loses 1 wound as the voices worm their way into their mind. For each success, a luck token is earned. So the basic benefit to these cards is that if you pass these cards, you are going to gain a luck token. And the luck token is the Lady Luck token here. That allows you to basically, it works like a fate point in the classic sense, where you can re-roll a poor roll. So I'm going to roll for him. His mind is a 5, so I have to roll a 7 or greater. So I roll a 6, so I did not, so therefore the tracker takes 1 wound. So each sheet has a placement area for wounds and modifiers. The modifiers are status, which could be poison, could be injury, it could be status or stat gains. So we're going to go ahead and discard this card as well. The radio static card and the mental strain, because during the course of an adventure, you want to discard your cards, so when you go into the next missions, you do not come across the same cards. The deck itself is like fully varied, so you should never have the same experience ever replaying. So if you were to play through a full campaign event deck, you may go through 40 to 50% of the cards. So playing through a second time would give you a completely different experience. So next up is rolling for the Slayer. Since the tracker had a chance to roll and see if he could pass the fear test for the radio static, we're going to roll for the Slayer because it does say that each player in play. So The mind of the Slayer is weaker, so he only has a 4. I'm gonna roll, and I've only rolled a 7, so he also takes a wound from the psychological damage of listening to voices cry out to him or call out to him. So now that that's occurred, it is now the next action for each of the heroes. So I'm gonna move each of the heroes. Since the door's been revealed, they're each gonna move to the door. So he has 3 more. 1, 2, 3, and he has 4 for his total move. Now they each have a second action at this point. Since the tracker has a better combat reflex than the Slayer, it may be best to have him open the door. Because opening the doors determine who has advantage. So if you can roll and unlock a door successfully, it adds to your advantage in the combat advantage roll. And the combat advantage roll is basically when an enemy and player are up against one another, they roll off. Whoever gets the highest roll gets to start and take the first turn, so that gives them an advantage. Opening the door successfully adds to that advantage. So in order to open the door, you have to roll 3 dice, and you have to roll even numbers. So you get 1 free reroll, and the hope is to get 3 even numbers to open the door quietly. If you fail, it just adds 1 to the enemy when it comes to their combat roll. So the player or the tracker is going to go ahead and use his action to open up the door. So I'm going to roll these 3 dice, and let's see what I've got. I rolled, oh my god, I rolled a 2, 4, and 6. So luckily, I have opened the door successfully for my action. And now I get to reveal what's in this room. So I'm going to draw from the room deck, which basically shows a small room, which is combat, and it shows the placement of the actual debris itself. And debris blocks line of sight, so I will be able to search those piles with each of my heroes, and it'll act as line of sight blockers for combat itself. Alright, so continuing along, I'm going to move this door marker temporarily, place our small room, and basically we have our small room joined into our small hall. So the space is there, and then basically it has the debris as indicated. So I'm going to place little bits of debris as well to reflect what is there on the card. So So it also has the additional doors. So I'm going to place the additional doors as well, and granted these door markers are temporary until I do the final design. So that space is set up, and now I actually have to draw for the event, the combat event specifically. So the door's been unlocked as my second action. I move over to the combat deck. I then draw and find scavengers. So basically, it reads, you come across a cluster of rat hounds rummaging through the shelves of a storehouse. If you move quietly enough, you can hit them first while they're preoccupied. So this is +2 advantage roll for the player. So not only have I opened the door successfully, but now I've found some rat hounds which are completely engaged. So I have +1, +2 to the advantage roll, so that gives the players a +3 in this scenario. So it tells me there's 2 players on the board, so there's 4 rats, and when it comes to placing AI, you place them at the furthest point possible from the player, directly from the player's line of sight. So from the tracker's point of view, they come at this point, and they basically radiate out from there, so wherever there is room. Actually, no, because the debris blocks line of sight. So all the rat hounds are placed. It's now the actual Slayer's turn. The tracker has moved and opened the door. The Slayer has moved and now has his secondary action. So it's up to him as to what he wants to do. As you can see, though, there's actually a piece of debris blocking direct line of sight. So he's still going to have to move in there to find a good position. So I'm going to move him 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's not within range for his shotgun, because the shotgun is a 4-tile weapon, so it has a maximum reach of 4 tiles. So as you can see, he is just shy of that final rat hound. So he's going to stay where he is in terms of his positioning, and it ends the turns for the player. Alright, so now that the rat hounds are actually in position, and the players are able to begin a new turn, because remember, drawing a combat event, like drawing a hazard event, also begins the new turn. This comes down to the combat advantage roll. So being the rats are preoccupied, the tracker is going to gain +2 to his roll. He unlocked the door, so he gets another, so it's +3. He's going to roll and add his reflex, which is a 6, and the rat hound's going to roll and add his reflex, which is a 6. So I'll use green for the rat hound, black for the player. So that rolls, and the rat hound ends up with a 10. The player ends up with an 8 + 6 is 14, so ends up with a 17. So the player wins out on that roll, therefore being able to take the first action in combat. And now it's time for the players to decide what they want to do. Basically, Tracker is able to take the first move because he has the highest reflex. He can move and react accordingly. He has 2 skills, which are a multi-strike and a hammer, and this is where tactically you could make decisions that make the most sense for what you want to do. His multi-strike passes through a number of creatures in a line, and as you can see, none of the rat hounds are actually set up in a line unless he got behind one of the rows. He's directly in front, and there's a piece of debris. And he has hammer, which means if he shoots one of them, it makes the creature prone, which means that it's easy to strike them in close combat. That would take the Slayer being able to actually close on one of these creatures and hit them. And at this point, he looks to be too far. So at this point, it looks like the Tracker can at least move and take a shot. So he's going to move 1, 2, 3, and then take a shot at the first one. So that will be, actually, it's going to be the Slayer's turn to move. So he's going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, and he will stay where he is. I'm actually going to place him on Overwatch for his second action, but I'm going to take the Tracker's first action. So when it comes to shooting at an enemy, you look at the player's range skill, which is on their card. It basically shows to the right what is needed on a roll of a d10. So his range skill is a 4+. He only needs a 4+ to hit. So rolling, and I end up getting a 1. So that's a huge failure. So too bad for him. The Slayer is too far away to shoot his shotgun. The reach of the weapon itself is only a 4, so he is 1 tile too far. Or 1 square too far, I should say, from the rat hound. So I'm going to put him on Overwatch. Overwatch is an active ability that basically allows him to fire once a creature moves within range. So that's both of their actions. The Tracker has moved and shot. The Slayer has moved and put himself in Overwatch. Alright, now it comes to time to have the rat hound respond and have their own action phase. So in order to carry out the AI and enemy behavior, the action deck is created to accomplish that. The cards that make up the action deck vary. A lot of them are ranged attacks, a lot of them are charges, precision attacks, special abilities, retreat, seeking cover, lots of varied things to give the enemy more flexibility and more variation in how they act, and create for a much more realistic gameplay type. So I'm going to take the first action for the enemy, which is the rat hound. So the rat hound is going to draw precise attack. So basically, it's saying that the enemy moves towards the nearest unengaged player and attacks. The enemy is allowed to roll 2d10 and to scout the lower number. So this is a quite far more striking attack, being that they get to roll 2 dice per attack. If they're already engaged, they get to do it twice. If they cannot reach, they get to move 2 additional squares. So it looks like the rat hound's move is so high that all of these rat hounds can make it to the player within a single turn of combat, because they're in a small room, they're not in a medium or large, and that would exceed their distance unless the debris gets in the way. So we'll see. So with enemies can all move and all attack as one conglomerate. Basically, since they're two heroes, they're four enemies, they get split off into the two heroes. You know, the nearest enemy that attacks, that would basically move. These are 5 tiles away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So as you can see, I move horizontally and vertically in order to accomplish the goal. And this guy, as soon as he takes the first move, the Slayer is going to be able to react to that and basically fire his shotgun, because he's on Overwatch. So his stat for shooting is a 3+. So he's basically going to be able to fire. So he only needs to get a 3, and he's going to roll, and bam, he only needs to get a 5. He's going to roll, and he rolls a 5. So he hits the rat hound. The shotgun itself is a high strength weapon. It's +2 penetration and 2 wounds. So a rat hound actually only has 2 wounds. So if I can get the shot to go off and meet the defense of the rat hound, which is the 6, I can kill one of them outright. So the goal for me is to roll a 4, because I need a 6 or greater, and it already has +2. So I've rolled a 9, utterly destroying the rat hound in that way. So this first rat hound is destroyed. The Slayer gets to draw a loot card. Each enemy type has a loot deck that they can use, and this deck will give the player a chance to draw and get different items per enemy type, and there's a common and rare item per enemy type. He has picked up some vermin teeth, so that goes into his pile of items, and that's obviously worth something as well. So getting back to this next rat hound, he's going to actually move 2, 3, 4, 5, and he's actually going to get his precision attack as well. So we'll do the one on the Slayer, since it's only one attack. He's going to roll 2d10 and then choose the lowest, or discard the lowest. So he rolls a 4, which isn't good enough. As you can see, the combat for that is basically a 5+, so not good enough. So the next attack is on the tracker, so he's actually going to get 2 rats attacking. The first rat rolls, discards the 2, the 7 hits. So in order to meet the defense, he actually has to roll, and his defense is only a 6. His vest does not provide him any additional armor. It's basically there to carry things. So the rat is going to roll again, and this time the rat rolls and gets a 9. So he does wound the tracker. So that's it for that one. Tracker is now on 2 wounds. All right, we're going to do these second batch of rats attacking the tracker in the back. Since they're all hitting with precise attacks, I can roll 4 dice and discard the 2 lowest, because it's going to be the same thing. So I'm going to roll 4 dice, get rid of my 4 weakest. So far I have a 10 and a 9 and a 6 and a 2. So 2 of those attacks have hit. Only 2 in total can anyway. And now the rat has to roll. And since the Slayer does not have armor and only a vest that allows them to carry additional things, when they roll to see if they penetrate, they only need to roll a 6. So I'm going to roll, and any 6s or higher I would get would be wounds. So now I rolled a 2 and a 3. Slayer is in good shape, and that ends this round of combat for the players, and the rat hounds taking a turn. Alright, we're going to continue the turn for the player versus the rat hounds. So basically the Overwatch is lost. The next player begins, or the next turn begins for the players. The players have the option to take this because they won the combat advantage, then they took a turn, the Rat Hounds took a turn, and now it's the second turn. So Slayer's obviously pretty pumped because he's quite powerful in hand-to-hand combat. And the Tracker is a balanced fighter, so he can handle both ranged and hand-to-hand combat. He's just not as well equipped as the Slayer, but he does have 2 rats on him right now, so we'll see how he does. So the Slayer's going to attack. He's going to use his machete. The machete is basically a high strength, high penetration weapon that causes 1 wound. So he's going to swing, and one thing I should say is any 10s rolled when it comes to rolling for a penetration automatically calls an additional wound. So I'm going to roll, and the Slayer's combat number that he needs is a 3+. So in order to hit, he rolls a 1. I'm actually going to spend one of my Lady Luck coins to re-roll that and see if I can get something higher. So I roll a 6, so that's automatically hit. Now the Rat Hound's defense is a 6, so I need to roll 4 because my weapon adds 2 to that. So he rolls and rolls a 7, so basically I have wounded the rat as well. So that's it for my action. The good thing is, though, I can spend another action attacking because I have 2 actions in total for the Slayer, and the goal would be to kill this rat outright. So I'm rolling to hit. I rolled a 10, which is awesome. And now I need to roll 4, so I rolled a 5. So he is destroyed outright, which is glorious. I draw a card for that, and this time I get Vermin Hide that I add to my pile. And since he did all the wounds, he gets all those. So it's basically the majority wound holder, or in an event of each player having an equal number of wounds on a creature, then it's whoever delivers the killing blow. So now it's time for this for the Tracker over here. The Tracker's in an interesting situation. He luckily has a forged blade, which it adds +1 to penetration, so he's going to use that, as well as he's going to attack twice. I'm just going to give him the forged blade and let him attack one of the rats 2 times and hopefully kill one of them outright. Limit the number. So I rolled twice. He only needs a 4 to hit because of his combat skill being a 6. So he hits on both of them. And then in order to destroy this rat, I need to roll, and I need to get a 5 or better. So I roll an 8 and a 1. One of those wounds, I'm going to spend a Lady Luck on him as well and re-roll my 1, and it still fails. So I'm only going to get 1 wound on the Rat Hound, which is a little disappointing. And that leaves one of those guys still hanging around. So it's now time for the Rat Hound's next turn. So the Rat Hound's going to choose to draw another attack, and this time they get their special ability. And it basically tells them they need to move towards the nearest unengaged player and then attack with their special ability. If they're already in contact, they get 2 special ability attacks, which is not good. So we're going to go ahead and see how things unfold. So basically, they're going to get 4 attacks because they get to attack twice. And in this case, I'm just going to move this up so we can see it. This is the poison bite. Basically, it's +1 to penetration, so this guy's low armor, so they only need a 5 in order to wound him. So I'm going to roll their basic stat score. To hit is a 5, so I need a 5 in order to hit on any of these. So I roll a 7, a 9, a 9, and a 4. So 3 of these 4 hit, and then it's +1, and so far only 1 wounds. So that's another wound for the Tracker. So basically, he is now at 3 wounds. So he only has 7 wounds, so, or he's been wounded 3 times, so. Alright, I may have to take something in before going into the next combat round with him. Alright. Alright, so now it's the hero's turn. It's now Tracker's got the activations because of the reflex, so he's going to try to basically use his ability now to, or not use his ability, but use 2 of the force blades to try to kill this wounded rat hound. So he's going to attack. Both of them fail, so it's pretty pitiful. I'm going to use another Lady Luck to re-roll one of these, and that will expend my Lady Lucks. He's rolled an 8, which means he's hit, and now in order to wound the rat hound, I need to roll at least a 5. So I do, and I kill off this rat hound, which then gives me a loot card. So I'm going to draw something and see. I've got vermin hide for the tracker as well. So now that that rat hound is dead, that was it for his turn and his actions. It is now the Slayer's turn. He's going to go ahead and 2, 4, 5. Oh, no. 1, 2, 3. So he barely makes it. So he makes it in there 4 spaces. He can use 1 attack. I could spend a shotgun shell, as I did before, which would only give me 2 left, which is pretty powerful. Or I could just strike with my machete. So I'm going to save the shotgun shell and strike with my machete. I need a 3 to hit, and I rolled a 10, which is really powerful. So now I roll a 1. So I'm going to spend the Lady Luck as well, try to kill this rat off. So I did. I rolled a 10. That basically 2 wounds on the rat. He's unwounded, so now he takes both wounds, and he is killed outright.
Oh, good night.
Shh. And then he gets a vermin teeth as well. So now, in that circumstance, you've seen the Slayer has killed 3 out of the 4, the tracker 1. So that's it for that round of combat. Now that the players have completed this combat experience, they're able to place one of these combat skulls into the mission tracker to show forward progress towards the mission. So they've got 1 in there, so they only need 1 more combat experience, and then they're able to reveal the mission card. So now that they've done that, this signifies the start of a new turn. The players can move, they can search, and the player actions are basically listed here. It's move, shoot, attack, search, trade, open doors, smash doors, destroy debris, use items, use abilities, and then the rules for prone targets, disengaging close combat, firing into close combat. Those sort of things are printed on a variety of different cards that act as your basically like your tools, so you don't have to consult the rule book, and it just speeds up play and makes it far more streamlined. So they're going to go ahead and move to new areas, and then they're going to search, obviously, because that's a free action. So for the first part, you know, tracker will move. 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess he will stay here, so he can open a door that way. And the Slayer is going to move right behind him. They're both going to search, so the tracker is going to roll, and he gets a 2. Which he finds stagnant water. I remembered that one. And then I'm going to roll for the Slayer, and he rolls a 49, and that is something far better than stagnant water. He's going to get a healing card draw. So he's going to draw from the healing deck, which is right here, and he will get something out of this. So he's going to draw and find that he gets a container of water, which restores 1 wound. So Slayer's already up to 5 items, and you can only carry 8 to start off with. Since the tracker has unlocked the door, he still has 1 more action, but now it's time for the Slayer's activation. Because during the exploration phase, in a non-combat scenario, each player takes a turn moving before they accomplish the second action. In a combat phase, they can carry out both actions at once if they wish, like firing twice, swinging close combat twice. When it comes to moving around the map, it works best to take 1 action at a time, from keeping the players together as a group, keeping them more cohesive. So the door's been unlocked. It's now the Slayer's turn. The Slayer's going to move 1, 2. He stops after a second move. he's going to uncover a card and find that it's a 4-way hall over here. And then that gets placed. He can continue his movement into the space, so moving an additional 2 squares. And now it's the tracker's turn, so the tracker can follow him and continue that space. So that ends that turn. Both players have taken another action. And since the hall was a no event, it's now the next turn. Now that I've moved the tracker, it's time to draw. To determine what this hall space is. So, drawing from the hall pile, this time I've got it hazarded, as indicated, and it basically shows what the door is. So I'm going to place this hazard, which is a long hall, which has a single door, and it basically shows it as pointing upwards, because you always go from the direction point on. And basically, I'm going to draw a hazard card from the hazard deck. So, going down to the hazard deck, and then drawing a lightning strike. So a heavy storm rolls in, massive black clouds reveal strikes of lightning that illuminate the crumbling buildings on either side. You move along wearily as a bolt strikes the wet surface only yards from where you stand. All players roll and apply their total number of luck tokens to the roll. The player that has the lowest total is targeted by a lightning strike and loses 2 wounds. So, since I've spent both of my Lady Luck on each of the guys, they do not have anything. So I'm going to roll for both of them. I'm going to choose green for the tracker, and I'm going to choose black for the Slayer. So, and whoever rolls lowest, and it would be the tracker. So the tracker takes an additional 2 wounds. So he is now up to, he's been wounded 5 times. So not very good for him. Alright, we're going to continue moving the players onward. And since that was a hazard card, it basically started and ended that turn. So the turn begins anew. Slayer is going to go ahead and back up the tracker. The tracker's going to move forward. I'm going to keep him in front of the door. Actually, you can fire on either side of the door based on line of sight. So, the door with the tracker. I'm going to look at opening the door, and let's see what I rolled. So I rolled a 3, a 4, and a 1, so I'm going to re-roll the 1 and the 3, and I got all even. So the door unlocks, gives me +1 to combat advantage, and let's see what we draw. So we're going to draw over here on the room category. And actually, it's not a combat event, but it's a reward event. So it's a small room, and it shows 2 pieces of debris and 2 doors. So I'm going to just take the small room, and I'm going to set it up right here. So as you can see, the player has experienced opening the door, finding the 2 pieces of debris, and being able to enter the small combat space. So. Alright, so I took a moment to set up the room and the doors within the space and even the debris. So, as you can see, because it's a reward experience, the players will benefit from this, rather than have to deal with combat or a hazard of that kind. So, I'm going to go ahead and draw the reward card now. So it basically says a section of wall is collapsed, obscuring the passage ahead. As you move over the debris, your eye catches sight of a hand protruding from beneath a fallen wall. Within moments, you pull the body free and find a backpack full of valuable items. Each player may draw 1 card from the healing deck. Alright, so any card within 4 tiles of each other. So, we're able to draw from the healing deck at this point, which is pretty helpful. So, each player will draw. And I'm going to start for Tracker, since he was the one who opened the door. He gets another thing of antibiotics, which is hugely beneficial. And the Slayer is going to draw, and he gets smoked meat, which is basically, it restores 2 wounds. He can even share it with somebody else if they want to split, restoring a wound apiece. So now that that has occurred, I can now decide on what I want to do for their second action. They can move into that space if they wish to search it, or they could continue moving down the hall.